In 2026, Forbes estimated Elon Musk's fortune at $839 billion. Larry Page, number 2 on the annual list, was estimated at $257 billion. Musk's lead was larger than Page's entire fortune twice over. One bar had separated from the chart, but that bar is not a bank balance. It is an estimate built from public shares, private companies, debt, and the latest valuations available on one specific date. Change a share price or private company valuation, and billions can appear or disappear without entering a checking account. To understand how a fortune reached this scale, we have to rewind beyond Tesla, Microsoft, and the first global billionaire ranking. The precise annual race begins in 1987. Before that, the evidence comes as milestones. Together, they show how the engine of extreme wealth changed, from steel and oil to software, platforms, space, and artificial intelligence. At the beginning of the 20th century, the defining fortunes were built from physical systems. Railways moved raw material, steel-framed cities, oil-powered factories. In 1901, Andrew Carnegie sold his steel company to a group organized by J.P. Morgan. The transaction was valued at roughly $480 million. That was the price of a business deal, not a Forbes-style estimate of Carnegie's personal net worth. Before standardized rankings, reports often mixed company value, personal holdings, land, and reputation. We can identify major fortunes, but a precise yearly top 10 would manufacture accuracy the sources do not contain. Carnegie's sale still marks a transformation. Private fortunes were becoming inseparable from national infrastructure. A person did not need mountains of cash. Control of an industrial system could become negotiable ownership. Priced at a scale ordinary income could never approach. The modern wealth bar had not appeared, but its mechanism was visible. John D. Rockefeller pushed that mechanism further. Standard Oil refined, transported, and sold most of America's petroleum. In 1911, the United States Supreme Court ordered the company broken into 34 businesses for violating antitrust law. The breakup divided Rockefeller's holdings into companies whose combined value continued growing. In 1916, newspapers described Rockefeller as the world's first billionaire. $1 billion then cannot be compared casually with $1 billion today. Inflation captures purchasing power, but misses economic influence. The Library of Congress notes that Rockefeller's assets in 1937 equaled roughly 1.5% of American output. Bill Gates's fortune represented less than half of 1% in 2018. That is why the early section uses milestones instead of a false continuous race. Dollars, inflation-adjusted dollars, and share of the economy answer different questions. The later chart uses one rule: nominal dollar estimates from each annual Forbes snapshot. By the middle of the century, oil was still producing extraordinary wealth. J. Paul Getty accumulated stakes in oil fields, companies, and concessions, including petroleum interests in the Middle East. In 1957, Fortune named Getty the world's richest person. The label was famous. The calculation was less transparent than a public stock portfolio. Getty's fortune depended on private holdings, underground reserves, corporate structures, and assumptions about what a buyer might pay. That problem never disappeared. Modern rankings may display one decimal place, but private company wealth still requires judgment. Getty also shows how succession moves the chart. A founder can die, donate shares, divide an estate, or place assets into trusts. The businesses may remain powerful, while the personal bar disappears. Extreme wealth is a race between markets, ownership, and time. By the late 1970s, the world still lacked a repeatable annual comparison. That system began in the following decade. In 1982, Forbes published the first Forbes 400, ranking the wealthiest Americans. Number 1 was Daniel K. Ludwig, a shipping and real estate magnate estimated at $2 billion. The reporting required thousands of interviews and investigations into holdings many owners preferred to keep private. This was an American list, not a world ranking. It also exposed a problem that will reappear in the animation. Should relatives controlling one company be counted as a family fortune or separate individuals? Early lists sometimes grouped families. Later lists increasingly separated heirs. A bar can split even when the underlying company loses nothing. The ranking is a researched estimate, not an audited statement. Forbes prices public stakes using markets and estimates private companies from revenue, profit, transactions, and debt. 5 years after the American list, Forbes expanded the search worldwide. That gives us the first defensible starting line for a continuous global race. The first global Forbes billionaire ranking appeared in 1987. It identified 140 billionaires across 24 countries. Japanese railway and real estate owner Yoshiaki Tsutsumi ranked first at $20 billion. Japan's property and stock markets were climbing rapidly. Banks financed development against land values expected to keep rising. Several of the inaugural fortunes were tied to Japanese real estate, and Tsutsumi remained the leading individual for 4 years. Then, the bubble broke. Property weakened, shares fell, and debt became harder to ignore. Tsutsumi's estimate dropped. Taikichiro Mori briefly became the leading individual, while historical tables grouped the Walton family above any one person. The visualization preserves those source labels. A family bar represents a published combined fortune, not one human being. The first transition contains the first lesson. A ranking can measure a market boom as much as personal skill. Japan created the opening leaders. American retail and software would define the next era. During the early 1990s, the Walton family occupied the top as one combined entry. Walmart converted a vast retail network into an ownership fortune. Later rankings split the holdings among individual heirs, making one large bar vanish and several smaller bars appear. While that accounting transition unfolded, Bill Gates was climbing. Microsoft supplied operating systems and software to the personal computer industry. The market increasingly valued it as infrastructure for a digital economy. Gates takes the chart's published top position in 1997 at $36.4 billion. During the dot-com boom, the estimate reaches $90 billion in 1999. Gates did not earn $50 billion in salary. Microsoft's market price multiplied the value of his remaining shares. This is the grammar of the modern chart. Ownership percentage times valuation, adjusted for other assets, gifts, and debt. Software created wealth faster than the industrial fortunes that opened the story. It also made wealth more volatile. The same market pushing the bar upward was about to pull it down. After peaking at $90 billion in 1999, Gates falls to $60 billion in 2000 and just over $40 billion by 2003. Microsoft remained profitable. The falling bar reflected lower technology valuations, share sales, and philanthropy rather than a disappearing company. The chart also shows Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. Buffett accumulated operating companies and public investments, allowing one holding company to compound value across insurance, transport, energy, manufacturing, and consumer brands. In 2008, Buffett reaches number one at $62 billion. That victory lasts one annual snapshot. The financial crisis cuts asset prices, and the 2009 list returns Gates to first at $40 billion. The bars never stop moving, but movement can reverse. A billionaire can build a stronger business and still show a smaller fortune when markets assign it a lower price. Wealth rankings compress a complicated balance sheet into one dramatic number measured on one date. In 2010, Carlos Slim and his family moved to the top at $53.5 billion. Slim's fortune was anchored in Mexican telecommunications and a broad collection of industrial, retail, and financial holdings. His rise interrupted the idea that first place naturally belonged to an American technology founder. Slim remains first through 2013, reaching $74 billion in 2011. Gates returns in 2014 and leads through 2017. But Gates had steadily transferred Microsoft shares and donated wealth. Ranking is affected by what is given away, as well as what is created. New bars were approaching. Amancio Ortega converted Zara and Inditex into a major fashion fortune. Larry Ellison remained near the top through Oracle. Technology, telecommunications, retail, and luxury now competed on one chart. By 2017, Gates led at $86 billion, below his 1999 nominal peak, even though Microsoft was a larger company. Ownership had changed. The next leader retained a major stake in a company entering a new valuation phase. Jeff Bezos reaches first place in 2018 at $112 billion, the first annual leader here to cross $100 billion. Amazon was no longer simply an online retailer. It operated logistics, a marketplace, subscriptions, and Amazon Web Services, the cloud business used by companies and governments. Platforms expand differently from factory chains. Digital infrastructure can serve additional customers, while ownership remains concentrated. When investors paid more for Amazon shares, Bezos's retained stake moved with them. His estimate rises to $131 billion in 2019, dips to $113 billion in 2020, then reaches $177 billion in 2021. Behind Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, and Larry Ellison occupy more space. The race has moved from software licenses to global platforms, commerce, advertising, search, cloud computing, and social networks. Another structure was about to produce an even steeper bar, combining a volatile public company with valuable private companies. Elon Musk reaches number one in 2022 at $219 billion. Much of the estimate is connected to Tesla's public share price. Another part comes from private businesses, especially SpaceX, valued through funding rounds, tender offers, and investor assessments. In 2023, Bernard Arnault and his family take the lead at $211 billion. LVMH controls brands across fashion, leather goods, jewelry, cosmetics, wine, and spirits. Luxury protects scarcity and pricing power across borders. In 2024, Arnault remains first at $233 billion. Musk's companies are priced around expectations for technology, manufacturing, space, and artificial intelligence. Arnault's empire is priced around demand for established luxury brands. Both create ownership wealth through different risks. Musk returns in 2025 at $342 billion. 1 year later, Forbes estimates $839 billion. The increase is nearly $500 billion, larger than every fortune that led this chart before 2025. The 2026 list contains 3,428 billionaires with combined wealth of $20.1 trillion. The United States has 989, China, including Hong Kong, has 610, and India has 229. Technology dominates the highest ranks, strengthened by expectations around artificial intelligence. Musk leads at $839 billion. Larry Page follows at $257, Sergey Brin at $237, Jeff Bezos at $224, and Mark Zuckerberg at $222. The distance at the top is unusual within the Forbes era. The final number does not mean one person has $839 billion available to spend. It means ownership claims were estimated at that value on March 1st, 2026. A different date produces a different chart. Across 125 years, the engine changes. Steel, oil, property, retail, software, telecommunications, cloud computing, luxury, electric vehicles, space, and artificial intelligence. The deeper story is how each era decided what ownership was worth. The bars will move again. Markets will fall, founders will sell, families will inherit, and new technologies will create unfamiliar names. The next richest person may already be here, or may be building a company no annual ranking has learned how to value.